Having one transformative moment doesn't mean that you're immediately going to be a different person overnight, and being better is something you have to work at, I guess.
Have you ever felt like you were fighting the world just to figure out who you really are? Beauregard Lionett knows that feeling all too well. At first glance, Beauregard, the sharp-tongued monk of Critical Role's Mighty Nein, comes off as a classic rebel, headstrong, sarcastic, and never afraid to break the rules. But behind that defiance is someone struggling to find her place and purpose. In a way, her story of rebellion and redemption might feel surprisingly familiar. In this video, we'll follow Beauregard's journey from troublemaker to truth seeker. We'll start with her turbulent backstory, from a defiant youth clashing with her family to the moment she's thrust into the Cobalt Soul, and see how that rocky start shaped her outlook. We'll watch as she grows within the Cobalt Soul and alongside the friends who became her new family. Along the way, Beauregard confronts the people who hurt her, including a tense reunion with her father, and begins to heal old wounds. Her tough exterior cracks to reveal a woman learning to trust, to care, and to fight for something bigger than herself. By the end of her arc, Beauregard transforms in a way she never would have expected, and her evolution holds some powerful lessons. Her journey shows us that even the most defiant hearts can discover a new path. Hi everyone, it's Shaylee, and Beauregard Lionett's early years were far from idyllic. She grew up in the quiet town of Camorda with her family who owned a vineyard. Even so, Beau always felt like an afterthought at home. Her father, Thoreau Lionett, was stern and traditional, controlling, and even a bit superstitious. Beau couldn't shake the feeling that he wished she were more obedient, more proper, or just someone else entirely. Feeling unwanted and stifled, Beau's rebellious streak caught fire. She refused to be the polite, dutiful daughter her father wanted. Beau would sneak out at night, get into fights, and break rules just to prove that she could. At one point, she even started secretly selling off her family's wine on the side. It gave her a taste of independence until her family caught on. When Thoreau discovered what Beau was up to, his patience snapped. To him, she wasn't a struggling daughter to help. She was a wild child dragging the Lionett name through the mud. Desperate to rein her in, he made a drastic choice. Thoreau arranged for an order of monks called the Cobalt Soul to come and take her away. In other words, she was effectively kidnapped on her father's orders and sent off to the Cobalt Soul's monastery to be reformed. Life with the Cobalt Soul was a harsh wake-up call. Beau was thrust into a world of discipline, study, and obedience, everything she'd always resisted. The monks forced her into rigorous training, trying to mold her into a dutiful monk, but Beau only grew more resentful. She hadn't chosen this, it was forced on her, and each lesson left a bitter taste in her mouth. She met their lectures with eye rolls and stubborn defiance. The harder they tried to break her, the more disillusioned she became with authority. It didn't take long for Beau to decide that she'd had enough. One night, she slipped out of the monastery, leaving the Cobalt Soul and her old life behind. Those early trials, both at home and at the monastery, forged Beau into the guarded, defensive woman we meet at the start of Campaign 2. By the time she crosses paths with the Mighty Nein, Beau is quick to challenge the world around her before it can hurt her first. Her journey of defiance was only just beginning, paving the way for the self-discovery to come.
I feel like I've found my family with Mighty Nein. I don't like looking at my past because it doesn't have the Mighty Nein in it.
When Beau first joins the Mighty Nein, she's not exactly looking for friends. She's brash, guarded, and keeps everyone at arm's length, not because she doesn't care, but because getting too close has always meant getting hurt. At first, Beau's place in the group feels shaky. She challenges people, tests their patience, and uses sarcasm like a shield. She's the first to point out a bad idea and the last to openly show worry. For Bo, trust isn't something you give. It's something people have to earn, and even then it doesn't come easy. But little by little, the walls start to crack. Jester, with her endless enthusiasm and mischievous charm, refuses to let Bo stay isolated. She draws Bo into pranks, teases her, treats her like someone worth laughing with, not laughing at. And even though Bo rolls her eyes, you can see it. She is starting to smile more. She's softening. And there's Caleb. Their connection is quieter but just as deep. Two people carrying heavy pasts, trying to make sense of who they are and what they've done. Bo and Caleb find a kind of kinship in each other, the so-called Empire kids joking about their trauma but finding comfort in the simple fact that someone understands, someone sees them and doesn't flinch. Over time, Bo stops being the outsider standing on the edge of the firelight. She steps in and starts trusting, not blindly, but carefully and deliberately. She has people now who believe in her, not because they expect her to change, but because they accept her exactly how she is. It's a slow, imperfect process. There are still moments when she pushes too hard or shuts down when things get too real. But for the first time in a long time, Bo is learning what it feels like to belong. Not because she's earned it through perfection or obedience, but because she's let herself be seen, flaws and all. Through the Mighty Nein, Beauregard doesn't just find companions, she finds family.
These institutions of power that go without being checked, that reside in secrecy. They are breeding grounds for corruption. If you kill him, it would just look like another senseless act of violence without any recourse. If we expose him, he is raked across the coals of the court of the public.
If you had asked Bo early on how she felt about the Cobalt Soul, you probably would have gotten a scowl, maybe even a middle finger. To her, they were just another symbol of control, another group that tried to force her into being something she wasn't. But life has a funny way of bringing us full circle. When the Mighty Nein's travels eventually lead them back to the Cobalt Soul, Bo is dragged back into the orbit of her old life, but this time, it's different. She's stronger now, and she's surrounded by people who trust her to make her own choices. And within the Cobalt Soul, she finds someone who understands that struggle. Expositor Dairon. Dairon isn't the strict, punishing figure Bo remembers. They represent a version of the Cobalt Soul that's about truth, not control, about using knowledge as a weapon against corruption, not against individuality. For the first time, Bo sees a path where the Cobalt Soul could be more than a prison. It could be a purpose. And Bo rises to meet that challenge. She throws herself into exposing the darkest secrets of the Empire. She hunts down the corruption festering inside the system she once despised. It's not about obedience anymore, it's about choice. Bo chooses to seek the path, to fight for justice, and to protect the people who cannot protect themselves. In time, the Cobalt Soul recognizes her for it. She is promoted to Expositor, not because she fit the mold, but because she broke it and proved that true strength comes from understanding who you are. Through the Cobalt Soul, Bo finds a way to honor her rebellious spirit, not by tearing everything down, but by holding it accountable and by demanding better. She doesn't lose herself, she finds a cause worth standing for, and maybe, just maybe, she finds a version of belonging she never thought she could have.
I accept my responsibilities and the things that I've maybe been a bit harsh on. But look what you've become.
It feels like a weird justification of your behaviors, but I'd like to hope that what I became had nothing to fucking do with you, but maybe I'd be lying to myself.
Bo finds herself back in Kimorda after years away, heart pounding as she walks the familiar path to her family's estate. The last time she stood here, it was as a defiant teenager being hauled off against her will. Her father had literally slapped her and handed her over to the Cobalt Soul to be rid of her rebellion. Now she returns on her own terms. The air is thick with unresolved feelings, but Bo isn't that scared, angry girl anymore. She isn't here for his approval. She's here to face the past and finally lay some ghosts to rest. Inside, Bo comes face to face with Beauregard Lionett. For a moment, he just stares in stunned silence as if he's seen a ghost. He fumbles for words, saying he's proud of what she's accomplished and confessing he made mistakes raising her. There is an apology in there somewhere. He admits he never showed her the love she deserved. But Thoreau can't help himself. In the next breath, he's making excuses, blaming her difficult nature and even his own father for how poorly he treated her. Bo listens, arms crossed and jaw tight. A younger Bo might have leapt at those scraps of validation, but not anymore. She came looking for closure, not for permission to exist. So she stands there, calm and resolute, letting his words wash over her without control. The tension in the room is thick when a small voice pipes up. A little boy peeks out from behind Bo's mother's legs, her baby brother, Thoreau Jr. or TJ. Bo has never met him before. In fact, she'd spent years pretending she didn't care he even existed. But here he is, barely 5 years old and full of innocent curiosity. TJ toddles forwards and suddenly wraps his arms around Bo in a clumsy, heartfelt hug. Bo freezes for half a second, caught completely off guard by the tiny human squeezing her, and then she melts. Gently, she kneels down to eye level, hugging him back just as warmly. This was the last thing she expected, a genuine welcome from a family member. Bo reaches up and removes the jade necklace she's worn ever since she left home, the very one her father gave her so long ago. With a tender smile, she slips it over TJ's head. It's an impulsive gesture of affection and a symbol of Bo letting go of a piece of her past. This emotional reunion with her brother softens something in Bo, but it doesn't magically fix everything. She and her father are still standing at opposite ends of years of hurt. Thoreau's half apology feels incomplete. He never truly takes responsibility for what he did, and Bo knows it. There's no dramatic reconciliation, no tearful embrace between father and daughter, and that's okay. Bo didn't come back for him. She came back for herself. In confronting her father, Bo says her piece. Maybe here's the closest thing to an apology he can offer. It's not the full closure one might dream of, but it is enough. As she blinks back a few tears and rises to leave, Bo feels a weight she didn't realise she'd been carrying finally begin to lift. Walking away from the Lionett estate, Bo understands that not every story ties up neatly. She may never have the loving father she once yearned for, but she's made her peace with that. Confronting Thoreau and unexpectedly finding a connection with TJ allows her to close this painful chapter on her terms. There's a bittersweet relief in that realization. Bo can move forward now, scars and all, without looking over her shoulder for parental approval. And as she continues on her journey, she does so with a heart more open to healing and self-acceptance than ever before. This isn't an ending for Beauregard Lionett. It's the beginning of a new chapter in her ongoing journey toward healing, growth, and finally embracing who she is meant to be.
When I was in Kimorda, that fear of losing this family, I almost sabotaged it. Just so that I wouldn't have to deal with the angst and the anguish of wondering if and when and how this family will fall apart. Like ripping off a Band-Aid that was never there. Or I guess over a wound that was never there.
Even after facing her past head-on, Bo finds that inner wounds don't heal overnight. Confronting her father and the ghosts of her upbringing was a huge step, but it didn't silence her doubts. She still struggles in quieter moments, questioning herself, wrestling with the old fear that happiness is fragile. In truth, allowing herself to be happy is daunting for Bo. For so long, she's kept people at arm's length, hiding behind a tough, flirty exterior to mask how utterly terrified she is of ending up alone. So even with her past confronted, Bo's biggest battles turn out to be with her own heart. She has key moments of doubt where that fear resurfaces. Bo often wonders if the wonderful bonds she's formed will slip away, a classic flicker of imposter syndrome telling her she doesn't truly deserve this newfound family. When praise comes her way or when she achieves something, like her promotion to expositor in the Cobalt Soul, a part of her still whispers that it might be a fluke. And with every warm friendship or hint of love, she feels a pang of what if I lose this? For Bo, caring about people means giving them the power to hurt her, and that is a frightening prospect. At times, she even considers pulling back to protect herself from potential pain. One of the most poignant examples is a quiet conversation she shares with Yasha. Bo confides that back in Commorder, she was so afraid of losing the Mighty Nein that she nearly sabotaged it herself, like ripping off a bandage before the wound even formed. In her words, the fear of losing this family nearly drove her to push them away first. It's a heart-wrenching admission. Bo was ready to throw away her own happiness rather than live in constant fear of it disappearing. Yasha listens, understanding more than anyone what it's like to fear happiness after so much loss. In that moment, Bo's vulnerability is on full display. She's finally speaking the truth about her insecurities, laying bare the depth of her doubt and fear of loss. Thankfully, Bo isn't on this journey alone. The support of the Mighty Nein proves to be the anchor she needs. Her friends consistently show her that they're not going anywhere, that her fears, while understandable, are not reality. When Bo nearly made a terrible deal to abandon her friends forever, all to break her family's curse, Yasha immediately stepped in to stop her. It was a literal intervention that saved Bo from her own self-destructive impulse. And it wasn't just Yasha. Jester's unwavering optimism, Caleb's quiet reassurances, Ford's trust in her judgment, and even Veth's humour to ease her anxiety. All these gestures pile up. Little by little, they chip away at Bo's walls. Surrounded by people who genuinely care, Bo starts to believe that maybe she does deserve their friendship. She even admits at one point that she'd lay down her life for these friends, a testament to how much they mean to her and how far she's come from the lone wolf who once scowled at the idea of family. With time and friendship, Bo begins a gradual shift toward accepting love and recognizing her own worth. It's not like she wakes up one day magically free of doubt. It's more of a slow thaw. She learns to lean into a hug without tensing up, to take a compliment without deflecting it with a joke. Moments that would have scared her before, like sharing a gentle night of laughter with the group or waking up next to Yasha feeling safe, become sources of quiet joy. One especially meaningful milestone is Yasha's heartfelt letter. In that letter, Yasha lists all of the things she admires and loves about Beauregard, and Bo is left genuinely stunned. It's hard for her to process that someone sees her in such a beautiful light, but instead of rejecting it, this time Bo lets those words sink in. She keeps that letter close, rereading it and slowly accepting that every word in it might just be true. Each of these moments is a step on Bo's path to healing. Surrounded by the Mighty Nein's love and unwavering support, she starts to see in herself what they see in her, a fierce, loyal, and worthy friend. The doubt and imposter syndrome don't vanish entirely, but they lose a lot of their power. Beau realizes that she doesn't have to be perfect to be loved. Her friends love her because of who she is, flaws, scars and all. And Beau, in turn, allows herself to love them wholeheartedly without the constant fear of the other shoe dropping. It's a delicate, hard-won kind of growth. By the end of her journey, Beauregard understands that this whole adventure was never about slaying every inner demon or proving she's invulnerable. It was about learning to be whole. She's not perfect and she never will be, but she doesn't need to be. Looking back at Beau's journey beyond the wild adventures and battles, we do find some very human lessons. Beauregard Lionett's story shows us the power of confronting your past. For so long, Beau ran from or resented where she came from, but eventually she stopped running and faced it head on, even standing up to the father who hurt her. It wasn't easy, but in doing so, she broke the hold those old wounds had on her. By confronting her past instead of burying it, Beau was able to finally start healing and move forward. It's a reminder that the only way out of our pain is often through it, and facing those ghosts can ultimately set us free. And Beau didn't have to do it alone. A big part of her growth was learning to let others in and trust her found family. Remember how closed off and defiant she was at the start? Little by little, that tough exterior softened as the Mighty Nein became the family she never knew she needed. Beau learned to lean on her friends, to truly trust them with her fears and hopes. She even went so far as to risk everything for them, willing to sacrifice her own happiness to save a friend. That kind of devotion was only possible because she opened her heart and let her companions become her support. Her journey shows that letting people in isn't a weakness at all, it gives us strength. With friends by her side, Beau found the courage to do things she could never have done alone. Perhaps the hardest lesson for Beau was accepting vulnerability and love. For someone who used sarcasm and swagger to guard herself, letting those walls down took immense courage. But Beau discovered that being vulnerable did not make her weaker. It allowed her to finally feel genuine love and connection. She allowed herself to care deeply and be cared for, especially with Yasha. Embracing that vulnerability, Beau found a love that helped complete her. It is a heartfelt reminder that it's okay to rely on others, to say I need you, and to allow yourself to be loved. In fact, opening up to love can be one of the bravest things we do. Through all of this, Beau's story teaches us that personal growth isn't about becoming perfect, it's about becoming whole. She didn't magically turn into a flawless person at the end of her tale. Beau is, after all, still cheeky, still a bit of a rebel, and she'll always have some scars, but she's not defined by her anger or fear anymore. She's more balanced, more herself than ever before. That is what growth really looks like. It's not erasing our past or changing who we are. It's integrating our experiences, even the painful ones, and learning from them. Beau grew into a wiser, kinder version of herself without losing the spark that makes her Beauregard Lionett. Her journey shows that we don't need to be perfect to be happy. We just need to keep growing and stay true to who we are. Beauregard's journey with the Mighty Nein has brought her full circle, and it's amazing to see how far she's come. We began the story with Beau hiding behind high walls of defiance, a young woman pushing others away while quietly yearning to understand herself. Now, after everything she's faced, those walls aren't quite so unbreakable. In their place, we catch glimpses of who Beau truly is. Someone brave enough to care, to trust, and to embrace the person she's become. This transformation didn't happen overnight or without struggle. Beau's growth was messy, earnest, and profoundly human. She showed us that being stubborn and guarded was once her shield against hurt, but it didn't have to define her forever. By finding the courage to lower her defenses and let others in, Beauregard discovered a sense of purpose and belonging she didn't know she was searching for. It's a hopeful reminder that even the hardest of hearts can soften, and that change, though never easy, is possible when we learn to accept ourselves and the love around us. Beauregard's journey from defiance to self-discovery invites us to reflect on our own paths. Perhaps you've had your own walls or moments of defiance and, like Beau, found growth in letting them down. What parts of yourself have you come to understand better over time? I'd love to hear your thoughts and stories in the comments. If you enjoyed this exploration of Beauregard's character, please consider joining the Discord, link in the description below, and whilst you're down there, give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for coming along on this emotional journey with me. I appreciate you being here, and until next time, growth is difficult, but never impossible.
This is all I have, is the Mighty Nein. To the point of where I was so desperate to control the situation of how I theoretically lost you all by attempting to sacrifice myself to that hag, because I guess I thought if I could control the way that this ended, even if it's as innocuous as growing apart, that might be less painful.